Hey, Michael, thank you so much for making yourself available.
So welcome. Thanks for having me. Great to see you.
Yeah, not at all, not at all. And I'm going to have the links in the description below where people can find your work, including your books on Amazon.
Hey, thank you.
Which you didn't tell me about. Okay, so please go check that out, people. And we're going to be referencing some of the material in one of your books. The book's called MK Woke. And what we're going to be talking about is the roots of MKUltra, which was a CIA mind control program. And you're saying it started off with the Tavistock Clinic. So what is the Tavistock Clinic?
Tavistock Clinic would be in the general network of Fabian and supported by the fundraising community underneath the Fabians. That general environment, Tavistock would have been a sort of a eugenics meets sociology type of think tank that still exists today. And they do things like gender clinics. And Mark Carney's daughter, there's some legal issues around how you gender people in Canada online. So our Prime Minister's child was involved with Tavistock in terms of some gender reassignment in adolescence, late teen, early teen year issues. So it's pretty out there in terms of it does gender transformation in the 20th century. It has its roots in eugenics. So we can just see that looking at things from an abstract distance, it crosses paths with probably nothing in your life and nothing in my life, because I don't do eugenics or gender transformation science, but they do.
Yeah, so, no, I don't do eugenics. However, I know that Tavistock Clinic does treat children and adults with mental health issues. I've actually attended many years ago, some social work training at the Tavistock Clinic, and it does stuff about, what I think is fairly innocuous stuff and useful stuff about child development and attachment science and stuff. But who set it up and why? What was the thinking behind setting it up?
So in reality, because what we're describing is a mythological fantasia that, even if it exists in reality, is so deviant from reality, moral reality, logic, it doesn't work. That what the programs you're talking about, that is what Tavistock is. That is what the Center for Addiction and Mental Health here in Toronto is. That is what the World Mental Health Organization is. It's really here to help people. What it's not here for is what we're talking about, which doesn't exist. And what I mean by it doesn't exist is it's an open secret. An open secret is something that exists. People could even have lunch there, like they did at the radio tower. But we didn't know what that tower was officially until it was revealed. It was called an open secret. And this is a BBC tower. You know the tower I'm talking about, right?
No.
Oh, okay. This is great. But there's a principle called an open secret. And in the folklore of the open secret, a famous telecommunications tower in London is cited as one of the best examples, because throughout the 50s and 60s, people would visit there, have lunch there. I think it's BBC Tower or something with the big plates on it. I forget the name of it. But people would eat there and stuff, but it was listed. It wasn't on a map, so to speak, and you couldn't talk about it on media because it was a actual sensitive site.
Right.
A member of Parliament described that in 1991, and then it became official. So in the folklore, open secret, the totem of open secret is this tower. So that's why I mentioned it. But so open secret. The open secret is what we're talking about. It's totally secret. MKUltra is secret. This Tavistock gender business only mainlined sort of by accident because it went wild. MKUltra went wild. It got released. They shut it down, but it was already released. It went wild, and it's everywhere. And it's what woke is. It's what the excesses of all the good things is from the MK gone wild. MK comes from Tavistock. There would be no MKUltra if it weren't for Tavistock, but MK actually comes from German concentration camps. So the technical, the technical MK comes from the first ayahuasca Nazi experiments. Okay, so that's the technical mind control. But the principle of eugenics and how to do it and why to do it, that comes from the Fabian, Milner group, which then has a scientific operation. Very typical. You'll find throughout the whole history of this thing that psychology and psychiatry are really important to the narrative of globalization, the narrative of the magic to keep nationalism not on stage, or if it's on stage, it's a villain. That requires a lot of psychology, and that psychology was developed in England by a military guy who's associated with the Tavistock. And when he did his speaking in 1943, everybody would have been in attendance to hear what the new position on eugenics was, and he delivered a stunning statement.
Who was this?
This was Rees. His name is Rees. I have it quoted here because it's hard to remember all these things. His name was Dr. John Rawlings Rees.
Dr. John Rawlings Rees. Okay. Now, before we go on to Dr. John Rawlings Rees, right? I'm gonna mispronounce a word.
Please.
But, okay, which is tangentially.
Mm.
Because I did that in one of my other videos, and people were saying, "Did he really say tangenitals?"
Oh, I didn't say that, did I?
No, did I really say tangenitals? That's right. I really did say brown balls. But what I mean is, it's linked to this, at a tangent to this conversation.
Yes.
Which is, why is it important to get to the source of something?
If you know your history, you will be free. And this whole game is to liberate.
Yeah, but how come? Why? What's the mechanics of this? It's just something that I've been pondering. For people who are watching,
if we can't name it, we can't master it.
Okay, but that doesn't mean we have to go to the source of something. Hold on a second, Michael. In the comments, I've been thinking about this for a while. Why is it important to get to the source of something? Now, I've come up with an answer, which I'm not going to say straight away, but I'd be interested in other people's input on this. So it's important to understand our history, because that means we get to the source of something. And if we can't name it, well, that isn't necessarily getting to the source of something. You know, like this is an MP3 player. I can name it. Okay, I now know what it is. This is a hairbrush, because I always check my hair before I come on, right?
Great hair.
Right? But I know what it is. But why is it important to get to the source of something, the origin of something? Why is it important to understand that? I just thought you might know, being a very clever philosophical head.
Well, you're a very clever philosophical person as well, man. And look, I would say when you look at your MP3, I can't distinguish that from a Zippo. So, but if you name it, I can. And so if it's named, it's sitting there on the end of the river. We've gone upriver. We see these two objects, a Zippo lighter and that MP3. Can't tell the difference really. But if they have a logo on them, if it's a Zippo, I know that's a lighter.
But that's naming that. That's distinguishing something from something else. Yeah. I'm talking about the origin of it. Why is it important to get to the origin of something?
To find out.
Here's what I've got, Michael.
To find out if it exists or not. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, we know it exists.
Not necessarily. Right? There's many things that don't exist that seemingly exist. But yes.
Okay, here's what I've got. This is the best I've got. And maybe people watching have got additions to what I'm about saying, compliments to it. It's important to get to the source of something so we can understand its true nature.
Yes.
So that the Tavistock, so for me as a social work student, going to the Tavistock Clinic to listen to a lecture about attachment or something else, child development, right? That's all well and good. But wait a minute, I am attending this at an institute that was born out of the eugenics movement. Well, that places a different spin. So, this is a little bit distasteful. So I think that's the key. But there may be more. So it is something that I've been rattling around in my head. So anyway. So Professor, unless you want to say something about what I said, Professor Professor Rees Rawlings?
No, I do. I want to engage what you said.
John Rawlings Rees.
Yeah. I would engage what you said because it's really important. And what I would say is my method is that I have a cauldron. We're going to throw everything in it and we're going to see how it floats around. And one of the things, let's really throw what you said into that cauldron, which is for people who have been working in reality, not the underworld, but reality, when you discover that there's a little bit underworld activity in reality, it's very destabilizing. That's harmful. You don't need to be destabilized. The world does not need to be destabilized. It needs to be, it's good. But we have these problems. And if enough people become aware of them, then it gets addressed. So to understand, how could in a cafeteria at a school where people are teaching sociology, so the professors of sociology are meeting in their teacher's lounge, and there's hundreds of students learning below them, and there's a disagreement about something about race or gender. Or somebody says this really horrible thing, which is, I don't know how we should let immutable biological traits affect how we view people on the opposite. So obviously we shouldn't say, right? We shouldn't reverse discrimination. And someone says, that sounds like you're talking about reverse discrimination, you Trumpian neo-Nazi, right? It's like, no, I'm totally not. I'm deeply Tavistock. But what I want to say is, should we adjust the dial to get away from this immutable biological frequency thing, because it may not get the results we want, which is a pacified group that can think for itself through any kind of situation. Because that's the reality of mind control, was that. But the thing is, going through with it says something about you. That's, you're manipulating other people's minds using drugs, chemistry, electrics. That's maybe not super duper. And then having a whole society that thinks that you have to reframe people's beings so they don't behave in ways we don't approve of, using drugs, electroshock therapy, hugging, all this stuff. So, but it all meant well. So I think you probably feel this way too. Everyone meant well. And but here's what happened. Okay, what happened was really intense. And I'm going to read a quote, if that's okay. Is that all right if I read a quote? Okay.
Yeah, please.
So just put yourself in the room listening to this. You've all been fighting for about a year and a half. People have died fighting the Germans. You yourself are in this room because you're old enough to have probably fought World War One. So you know about gas, machine guns, protesting war. You know all about this. But now we're in a new situation. We're fighting the Nazis. We're enforcing the Nazis are fighting us, and we're trying to get the Americans in on the game. The Americans are not interested in joining this war. So we've sent William Stevenson over to penetrate, on behalf of the establishment, penetrate the American psyche. William Stevenson's over there doing that. Meanwhile, you're in a room, guy on stage, medical doctor, officer, military. You're all military, medical doctor people. And he says, we can therefore justifiably stress our particular point of view with regard to the proper development of the human psyche. Even though our knowledge may be incomplete, we must aim to make it permeate every educational activity in our national life. We have made a useful attack upon a number of professions. The two easiest of them, naturally, are the teaching profession and the church. The two most difficult are law and medicine, says a military officer connected to the banking system. Okay, so you got the tie-in of something heavy going to happen. Now, why I mentioned William Stevenson over there in America trying to convince the Americans to come into the war, that was essential for the, not survival of Britain so much, but that was essential for the reordering of Europe that World War I had not completed. They had to get the Americans in. And so within that headspace of, we have to make the world like us, one system. This is what the one system psychiatrists were talking about. What is the nature of the one system psychologically? What will we develop? We need some artillery, we need some weapons. We're going to develop sociology. We're going to develop a bunch of... So the two easiest things to penetrate were the teaching and the church. Nice, well-minded people, Fabian indoctrination. Soon they're putting plastic bags over their neighbors' heads because they have 2 lawnmowers. You rush right into Maoist insurgency genocide from... I'm just making a huge leap, right? But we have the beginning of the program is 1940, and the show was called Strategic Planning for Mental Health, and it was at ye old Tavistock in on the river.
Excuse me, have you signed up for my free newsletter yet? Go to richdoespolitics.com.
Okay, and the idea about, I mean, how is it connected to eugenics that we're going to set up this Tavistock Institute for improving people's mental health and dealing with mental health issues? Well, that sounds like a good thing,
right? Pygmalion,
because there are people that have mental health issues. Yeah,
Pygmalion.
Well, how would you tell you?
Well, But Pygmalion, she wasn't crazy. She was just low class. So it's not just about saving people with mental illness. So in reality, in the white side of reality, in the light side, the top of the pyramid, not the shadow world, because there's 2 worlds. We're bimodal reality in a way, in this metaphor. We have the situation of, well, yeah, of course, there's people who have congenital mental illnesses that make them not useful or a burden. Okay, so maybe let's grow some more wheat. Let's maybe make a house for them, or let's sterilize them. Let's sterilize them. Well, it's not an animal. What are you talking about? So with a congenital mental illness, you're going to sterilize them? Well, but maybe they have some kind of thing that's called human, and maybe that's allowed to live, and we're not supposed to get in there and start messing around with who's allowed to live and who's allowed to die any more than we are. I don't like the way you roll. You're going to be my slave. Can't do that either. So this is so that is where so basically the false, so we have the Tavistock is going to be introducing the mechanism institutionally by which policy is directed, and they're articulating policy. They're articulating the policy that they've received, and they've received it in that sort of general Cecil Rhodes vibration, the Anglo-American supremacy, all that vibe. That's the signal they've got, and that's where they're going to go with it. And their mission is to go using full spectrum institutional. Their institutional capture. So this division are the lead. They're the kind of the front office of capturing the long march through the institutions of Britain. So Britain, then and America and Canada and Colony.
Okay, so what you said was really useful. So they set it up in order to use psychology and psychiatry as a way of categorizing people, which would then justify treatment towards certain groups of people. So, there are people that have mental health issues, schizophrenics and bipolar disorders and everything. Okay, we can categorize them, we can treat them. And then, like you said, with Pygmalion, there are people who are of a lower order, who don't have the mental or intellectual wherewithal. Therefore, we can target them in a particular way to euthanize them slowly over time.
Or just readjust how they are positioned in society.
Right.
And now throw in Dr. Ewen Cameron. Now we're going to get a bit MKUltra. And we're going to now go, well, not just the feeble-minded or the insane. Now we're going to do social engineering on people who think too highly of themselves because of what they've accomplished in the past, and may have a positive sentimental feeling about their genetic inheritance. So if somebody has a positive feeling about their genetic inheritance, and they also have a positive feeling about themselves because of something they have accomplished in their life, they may need a little bit of surgery as well.
Right, because we can't have people of the wrong class
having
a positive view of themselves. That's unacceptable. They need to know
or even anybody at the upper tier. If any of them have a truly positive, so anybody from the elite circles, if any of them have a non-pathological self-perception, they need a little bit of tinkering too.
Right. So one thing we could all do to make the work of the intelligence agencies, the CIA, MI5, MI6, Mossad, and the globalists, to make it easier for them, is we could all start pathologizing ourselves if we're not doing that.
Yeah.
That would help them, right? Okay. So let us know in the comments if you're willing to take that on.
It's not any of the agencies or the individuals, because when you were a sociologist, Rich, when you were doing that gig, you weren't trying to control other people's lives. You were trying to help them. So it's not the people who are at the levers before they clue in and drop out or get zapped or levered, that they don't know. There's nobody doing this maliciously. Nobody. People don't know. To get to this level of understanding we are at, you're out of it. You couldn't even talk this.
Right.
You couldn't do this research. You couldn't study this. You couldn't network. You couldn't operate out there to learn this. You're in a silo. Even the grand wizards, even the big boys, they're siloed, man. Super siloed.
And I'm going to go back to Dr. Ewen Cameron in a moment, right?
Yes.
But the pathologizing the self, well, that takes us right into the transgender, where boys and girls are manipulated to think that there's something wrong with them, which then requires some sort of medical, mechanical, surgical, chemical intervention. It is fabricated and induced illness, or also known as Munchausen syndrome by proxy, at an institutional level. Okay, so
and
back
Stockholm
to
syndrome too, and because there's an awareness, so you can toss in some Stockholm to them because it's capture. It's a
okay,
capture issue. So there's a kidnapping
okay,
issue. Uh,
okay. So then
yeah. So
back to
it
Dr. Ewen Cameron.
diverges. Yeah. So
Yeah.
sociology diverges into two streams, and this one stream is the stream that my personal family is from. And the
Mm-hmm.
other stream is the kids I grew up with at school, literally at public school, who I grew up with. They're from the other side of it, and I'm from this particular side. So, sociology is not all bad.
Mm-hmm.
Mind control is all bad. Yeah.
Really?
So
I think
yeah,
you're being a
all
bit
of this
harsh on
stuff.
mind control, Michael.
It's control. It's the control thing, and that's the thing that's the problem that a lot of people struggle with in management is the control issue. And how much do I have? How little am I in control of myself, and how much am I compensating by trying to control other people? And once people understand they're not in control of themselves until they stop controlling other people, as the first indication that you're in control of yourself, is you no longer try to control other people, and then the game is on. But that's hard because a lot of people devote their lives to networks of control, and they are
Right.
and sad. It's a hard thing, and it's a misuse of the system, and that's where there's this divergence, and where the nice people went, and where the folks who are still figuring it out. But you're going to help them. You're going to help them figure it out.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Now, Dr. Ewen Cameron, what was his connection to Tavistock? And then what was his connection to MKUltra and CIA? What was the linear progression or the track of history?
So they needed to get psychological profiles of the Germans. So they sent out psych assessment teams. Remember, the CIA doesn't exist at this point.
Right. So the Tavistock wanted psychological assessments of the Germans.
Tavistock were instructed to use their facilities to get that material.
Okay. And this is where Dr. Cameron came in.
He's just a guy. So he's from the American side, but he's working for the OSS, which is under the control at that point still of the British, and through William Stevenson.
And that was the OSS, for people who don't know, was the precursor to the CIA.
Yeah, it was. It is a thing that happened before, but it's not the precursor to it. It's CIA is a standalone type of situation.
Okay,
but OSS, it's one of its parents is OSS, and OSS. What can you say? OSS is at the front of BSC, the British Security Coordination. So that's the front, and then you got OSS, and then that gives birth to everything in 46, 47.
Okay.
CIA,
all right.
All that shit.
Okay, so then Dr. Ewen Cameron is one of the team assigned to investigate German psyche.
Yep.
The psyche of the Nazis, I assume.
Yep.
So then
German
what
people
happened?
and the Nazis and Adolf Hitler. So they do a whole run up of Adolf Hitler. They do a whole psych profile, which is a really cool hobby, which AI is super to have fun with nowadays. You can use psych profiles on anybody, throw 6 or 7. If they're a public person, you can just say assess their media profile for psych, and you can just say print as a psych profile in the style of World War II. Anyway, whatever. You can just make these documents up for fun. And anyway, they did it for real with old Hitler and all the big Nazis, and they came up with dossiers of it, all that stuff. And this would be, the fetish weird stuff. That's later. This would be more, what's he saying? Where, who's he talking to? All that. Where's this stuff coming from? What's he about? What's his mom and dad like? Where's he? There's other stuff about him. Anyway, so basically, during the process of World War II, they do psych profiles of all the enemy leadership. They also do psych profiles of the people in general in advance of a type of victory. And so by the time Nuremberg trials come around, they already have dossiers drawn up about the psyche of the German people. And this is where the language of the Tavistock and sociology all comes up. This is the beginning of these psychological profiles, the beginning of these interventions, behavioral interventions, and then the green light, total carte blanche from everything from using orphans and prostitutes to breed secret armies of experimental human people to not like genetic experiments or robots, but just like people to do shit with using orphans and all that stuff. That's the MK side of sociology, and that's real. And a lot of the data that you'd be reading in normal sociology is actually taken from horrific experiments that have been multi-generational. There's a bunch of people in Canada who survive it. Anyway, so Dr. Ewen Cameron, he first pops up in the world of conspiracy theories as the guy who's creating a psych profile on the Nazis. And he's the one that determines that there is a psychological process by which the Germans can be reconditioned. Now, he is working with captured MK Auschwitz pharmacology initial material. So they do have that in that network, but they haven't analyzed it for 5 years or whatever. So they're not really thinking about using peyote to make the Germans not Nazis or proud of themselves or efficient or Teutonic. The mission is to make them not Teutonic, to strip from the German psyche in toto the notion of Germanness, to not alter it, erase it. And so this is illegal. That's a mental war crime. That's a type of genocide. That is actually a genocide. So basically, under the rubric of denazification, there was a program in Central Europe to the heart of the Austro-Hungarian, the most powerful intellectual force of the Western Empire so far in our evolution was Austro-Hungarian. The legacy of that is old Germany, and that gets completely. What do we have in Germany now? It's sort of the heart of a signal of the EU mission to denationalize, to globalize, to forget sovereignty, to forget reasonable pride, to conflate pride with something that's unreasonable. It's a huge mental reformation. We are to reshape the psyche of each nation so that it can.
Okay.
Yeah, and then so the spectrum is if you have a farm, okay, governments don't care about the well-being of children, period. If you have a farm that's in the way of an agrarian reform and you have 12 kids working on your farm and one of them got eaten by a tractor, you slugged another one, okay, though that farm's closed, okay? The care worker cares. The people taking those kids in care. The judge cares. Everyone cares. But it was all because there's an agrarian reform program, and no one cares if a kid gets destroyed. The state doesn't care if a child's destroyed by a tractor. The state is reforming agrarian control because of debt financing mechanisms. Full stop. Now we, on the front line, ground level, we care. We try to do our best using these ordinances that we work with, but we slowly discover that we are wearing a red coat. Now this is what MK woke is all about. So MK woke is us slowly understanding that we are under mind control, and the mind control is not beneficial, friendly psychology. It is militarized sociology. And there's a narrative, A to B to C, and that's where we want to be, ready? The narrative.
Yeah, and I want to take it there. So I assume, so what happened with Dr. Ewen Cameron, so he and other people doing some work on, I suppose, answering the question of why did certain German people become Nazis? Why did German people succumb to the entreaties and the programming of the Nazis, that they all went along with this policies, or they didn't speak up or whatever? What was going on? How were the Nazis able to control them? And then how can we use that process for our own ends? And then also, how can we learn? What can we do in terms of programming and reprogramming human beings to think the way we want them to do, right? So that would be the course of progression. So then he's doing that work. How did MKUltra, what were the steps where MKUltra sprung out of that?
Cool. The position that you're looking at this from, your perspective, in my estimation, is exactly right. Because Cameron was instructed, not by scientists, by men who had become military officers and who had become intelligence. And they were men of means. They weren't hung up on little things. So the view you have right now is exactly, in World War V, if it ever came around, there would be a process. In your perspective, that's exactly what would initiate the chain that we've documented here, that I've documented. Okay? That is your query, exactly. So how can we, so instead of that, we go to the reality base. Okay? English people know Germans, a few hundred years. each European knows each other European to the point of this stereotype. There's no mystery about what a Polish person is, a German person. Every English person at every station in English society knows what every German at every station, they know what they know everything, right? So, because that is and what they don't know is more than what they know, but it doesn't matter because people don't know anyway. It just makes stupid stereotypes about individuals, right? So this idea of the national psyche. Okay, well, you and I know that it would take about 6 months, or you and I probably suspect it would take about 6 months to tell Britain that it's proud. Probably tell about 6 months to say Britain's not proud. It's just you have to do a full spectrum 360 intervention. You got to change the drugs that are on the street. It's a big program to change the way people think about themselves. It takes a certain amount of time. It's a switch designed, built, used everywhere in the world. So we now have, what was this? So I mentioned drugs. So one of the things that would be happening when you're doing your bit as a lawyer, or a psychologist, or a social worker, or a military officer at Auschwitz, at Nuremberg, is you'd be reading on these files, and some of them would have paper clips on them, and some would have a little matchbook near them or whatever, and there are all these different signals about don't touch this guy, and or Jimmy's interested in this guy. Well, who's Jimmy interested in? These guys that were using psychedelics to torture people, interrogate people. We heard about this thing. We were interviewing some survivors. We heard about it, and we want that guy. Oh, he's over here in this cell block. He's about to go on trial. He's about to be hung. Well, don't hang that guy. Whoa, whoa, whoa. This guy knows where to get the ayahuasca. Because nobody knows where you get ayahuasca. This German Nazi guy, he knows where to get it. So got to save him. So he's Paperclip. He's Operation Paperclip. Or Operation Matchbox. Or that's another one's discovered, Operation Matchbox. Another one, there's operations about these selections. And so people are brought in, and it takes a generation to change your accent, change your culture. You in the 1940s, they all dressed the same. All wool, white shirts, wool jackets. Everyone dressed the same, had the same haircuts. A little bit different diet, a little different physiognomy, but you start feeding Germans British food, they begin to look, it's so the assimilation, Canadian, they become Canadian. And this isn't about some Nazi SS butcher being discovered on a farm, having hidden out, escaped. This is systematic importation of thousands, tens of thousands of people into the Allied nations. Oh, yeah. And some of them were shrinks, logistics, nurses, doctors. So one MK survivor here in Canada, Anne Diamond, has a very good narrative about a character who shows up from a displaced persons camp, gets to a psychiatric facility here at Ontario, and seemingly the people that are there are Auschwitz survivors. And it's people who, this is a crazy story. I have lots of details. I've got one eyewitness on it. And I got lots of stuff on this. That's a fascinating tangent. But like all of this, it all applies. This is, so we're learning, we're under the rainbow, and we're learning, we're the students, and we're learning. So they were going to rainbow us, but we're learning. So, let's go.
So,
sorry.
What sort of experiments did they do? How did they use ayahuasca and other psychedelics whenever they were used in order to reprogram?
Okay, so let's go.
The Nazis or Dr. Cameron or whoever.
Great.
What else did they do?
So the most published literature in Canada goes to Dr. Cameron. So we can say that within a few years, the sociological penetration of education, religion, had getting into law and medicine. So we got to get into the minds of the people who are going to do law and the people who are going to do medicine. So the main university for that activity in Montreal, which is a region sort of very important to this group of people, would be McGill. So McGill University for law and medicine is like Yale. So 49, 47, Cameron arrives, 49, 47. He sets up the school by 53. The school is called the Allen Memorial Institute, and it's in a Gothic building called Ravenscrag. Yeah, a tower on a hill in Montreal that's Gothic, that's called Ravenscrag. And they set up a covert military drug torture chamber trip out. With a couple features. One is the leaf room, And that's a room that's covered in leaves because they're going to trip you so bad that if you don't have nature, it's just you're going to turn into a machine or something. So they cover the room in leaves, and you're in this room called the leaf room. There's another one. There's a couple of these, and they're all documented by multiple people at different times. They've gone to lawsuit, and they've been set in court. There's all documented material. The problem, there's a problem with which jurisdiction is responsible, whether it's Canadian Department of National Defense, Government of Canada, or if it's the CIA. So there's some legal bouncing around who's responsible, but the Canadian government has already paid out millions to a bunch of survivors of the programs. All this material is from their testimonies. So this is all serious stuff. Grim stuff, man. So they basically are doing everything from, now this is not as directly documented as you would like, but someone will come out of the woodwork at some point with documents that will affirm all this, no doubt. And documents I have to affirm just what I'm saying, or enough. So there was so basically they did everything from, they created kind of Jason Bourne type people. People just don't know. Jason Bourne, they take that kind of thing. But also for just office work. So like you think Jason Bourne's like a shooter. No, it could just be some guy who's tripped out on a policy. Your whole mission is just, if this ever happens, you will make this policy happen by subversion or whatever. So you can see like you'll tamper with the votes, you'll whatever. You'll go in like a saboteur. You'll go in like an assassin. But your mission will be to assassinate a reform. So that is MK2. And you see how that could just be your normal rainbow-haired wokeista. It's gone wild. It's gone open air. Yeah. But there's steps in between. Many steps in between, which we have to talk about.
Through giving psychedelic drugs, electroconvulsive therapy. How?
Yes. So are you aware of any of this previous? Have you heard the rumors or?
Just a little bit.
Okay. So electroshock therapy.
They broke people. They wanted to break.
Well,
somebody comes in with a particular disposition. They want to change that disposition to something so they become malleable and can be created in the way that you suggested.
Yeah. Tavistock's specialty is breaking point. That's Tavistock's kind of thing. And then the MK thing is the potters, I call them. They're the ones who
the recreation.
Yeah, they mold the clay. They make the pottery. They make the vessels.
Okay. But how do they break people, and then how do they remake people?
They'll electrocute them, give them huge amounts of psychedelics, tell them they're assholes, whatever. One friend of mine had a tape machine put under her bed by her dad. And the question is, what was her dad doing that he got in so much trouble that he had to do that to his family? That's what my friend Ann Diamond wonders about, because her dad was Air Force. And so Ann is a survivor. Ann was also a friend of Leonard Cohen's. And Ann Diamond has incredible, oh yeah, you should have Ann on. She's incredible. When you're ready for MK survivors, she's one of the best. She's one of the best. And there's another one that only you can get, because you got the pull, baby. If you get it, you got Ann and you get Kathy O'Brien. And basically you will have, she's the queen. Kathy O'Brien is the default expert on the technical application. She talks about this. She's very open about how serious they'll go with a scalpel. Yeah. On this program, scalpels, as well as drugs, as well as now Anne will tell you about the electronic interference and it wasn't electronic. Well, yeah. Is a tape recorder electronic? A tape.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
It's an electronic device.
All right, electronic interference. Yeah, is it electric? It's anyway. Technical interference from the 60s. Yeah, but she can also back it up with eyewitnesses see her here and there. So I mean, she's a real deal. She's part of the lawsuits. She's an expert on the network of the lawsuits here in Canada, which is a really important little thing. Now we've gone into a tangent of some eyewitnesses, but basically you were asking me how did they attempt to gain control of another person's psychology for a period of time? Well, they did it from everything from surgery, cutting bits of your body off or out, to drugs, to electricity, to kidnapping of your loved ones, to anything. If you were if you were an incredibly intelligent psychopath and you were given the green light by the most powerful people on earth, in your understanding, if you were given the green light by what you thought was the most powerful force on earth to do your worst, sir, on the enemies of whatever you want to frame it, there's people going to do it. And they would do everything, and they did do everything. But the internet has made this old sport of collecting newspapers and making newsletters and trying to tell the world. Like Kokinda was involved with a group called EIR, Executive Intelligence Review, Lyndon LaRouche.
Right.
And they're doing what you're doing. But they're analog, telephones, maybe fax machines, all talking. And they compiled a battle book. Like what you've got, your last year of videos is a battle book, right? If it was edited out, you can learn so much. They did that. Now we do it it's our media. We don't listen to talk radio. This is our environment. We are now in the realm of MK Woke using the new technology. But the difficulty is, when you name it, you claim it. When you name it, you master it. So now we're naming it, and the program is, it's not working too good for you. It's not working too good for me. We're just normal people. But it's a huge, beautiful story of how they cooked it up. We can sympathize with why. It was a good idea. End war, end poverty, end insanity. Great idea. Let's do it with one world. Let's do it because we've got this one world trading system and we're going to industrialize underdeveloped nations. So let's make everybody a good worker. Let's get everyone talking the same vibe, being the same vibe. Now, when you find out, you may want to take acid and grow dreadlocks and start wearing a tam, but don't do that. There's no need, because there's so much of the real world that is really good. Like, the real world makes sense. It's the shit that people thought we had to do to preserve that is insane. And now we're learning about it because of the internet. And it was all hidden because you could hide this before in files. And the BSC, British Security Coordination, that's a bigger, more interesting story than the CIA ever has been. CIA is a finger of the BSA. BSA is the hand. BSC is the hand. This is the hand, baby. Everybody talks about how, so we have to stay on MK Woke. But basically what I will say is the FBI was penetrated by BSC. BSC owns the FBI. And you're saying, but BSC is gone. British Security Coordination is finished. Oh. It's not finished any more than you are finished, any more than your genes.
Well, it's birthed. I assume it's birthed MI5, MI6, and it's got its tentacles in CIA and Mossad.
Tentacles. I don't understand what you mean by tentacles. It's the entire methodology, the concept. So the entire methodology, the raison d'etre. Now, I don't know about the British MI scene because I don't know when that was. I don't know when, and that is. And I do know that MI people were upset. Even within the Hambro fold, MI people were upset that the Canadian was being sucked into it with the executive privilege that he was given. And they've never recovered. That group has never recovered from. In fact, the Civil War you see is those two. It's like sociology. They're super anxious. Popularly described as white hat, black hat. So and that is an incredible story too. And it's part of MK Woke, because MK Woke is using mind control to make everybody woke, which is woke, you could say, is Stasi. Turn on your neighbor, shame the one who's not conforming with the Sovietique.
Oh, yes.
Okay. So that's the
shame you and I, Michael, for not having our minute by minute safe and effectives.
Well, I did, man. I have my brown shirts upstairs, Rich. I don't know what you're talking about. Look, man.
That's right. Shame us because we're still breathing out carbon dioxide and we believe in old-fashioned notions like photosynthesis.
I've been thinking about a hamburger. I'm hoping it's not. I'm hoping it's somebody. Anyway, but it became wild. It became ubiquitous. And there's a film called Conspiracy Theory with Mel Gibson, which if you take today's social interaction norm as a sociologist who's looking for the care of children, you take that 2026, you and I on this TV show, and you superimpose it on 1984 or 85 when the movie Conspiracy Theory was made, and we would be a TV show in the background of the Mel Gibson character. We would be considered like Alex Jones. We would be considered radical, fringe, dangerous. And that's an ebbing of the tide in 30 years. So now, this is weird. My youngest son, 6 years old, had a Stranger Things t-shirt on. Okay. Stranger Things is a television show on Netflix about an MKUltra facility experiment gone wrong and the aftermath of the
Jeez.
civilian world. That is that's pop culture. Okay. It's called Stranger Things. If you look up Stranger Things, you'll see this is a huge phenomenon in pop culture. My 6-year-old son had a thing. Now, look, if your kid had a Grateful Dead t-shirt on and at 6, and I'm a Deadhead, you'd be like, whoa, man, whoa, I don't dress my infants up as anti-Tavistock psychedelic freakouts. We're not there, man. So I'm not going to dress my kid up in an MKUltra t-shirt. He's wearing an MKUltra t-shirt. And I'm like, wow. And another relative says, what is that? I'm like, you don't want to know. Anyway, I know a guy who was at Montauk who's published a book. And if you want to, I know Chris Lederer, who is an incredible MK survivor. And he's near our age. And I think he's a little bit younger. I don't think he's 71. I think he's 73, 75. So he's actually kind of the last Gen X, or middle last. He's a slightly different gen. And he's a different kind of people. He's also Quebecois. So anyway, MK is you can call it the kinetic, tactical, military eugenics is the kinetic side, MK is the killing part of sociology. MK kills you.
Yes.
Yeah. And sociology is meant to help you.
Okay. So then that all came from we can track it back to the Tavistock Institute, which can be tracked back to eugenics and the Fabian Society.
Yeah. And the Americans, because eugenics is a big part of imperialism. So when you take place, you have to wipe the people out, and there's programs, and as an industrial...
You have to justify doing that as well, right? So Charles Darwin was a eugenicist. Okay. Now, then that line of progression would at some point have merged with, because I told you before we started recording, I recorded a video about Alfred Kinsey, the sexologist, and how his ideas got adopted by the United Nations and the World Health Organization and are now widespread in schools, giving rise to whole trans movement. So then you've got the Tavistock eugenicist branch, and then this one from Alfred Kinsey merging, and we've got the trans agenda going like crazy in schools in the United States, Canada, in Europe and Anglo nations.
There's a step in between. So I call that, so we got brother MK shadow, death, and then we're still talking about sociology, which we can now call para-eugenics. So it's beside eugenics, para-eugenics, sociology. And that, there's a character from Rees, from the I'm sorry, not Rees. From the Rawlings Reef character, we go to a new 2 characters. One, and there's one in each country, but the one in Canada, he created the World Mental Health Organization and created the World Health Organization. So these guys, a Canadian named John Seeley, who my family's connected to, created the World Health Organization. Full stop. And there was a civilian military partnership. That was how the WHO was created. An office within the UN, the UN land given by Rockefeller. Rockefeller was Intrepid's point of contact, BSC. Anyway, so basically, you've got Seeley. He does the educational, and then you've got Jesus. Just hold on, let me look it up real quick. You got
John Robert Seeley.
John R. Seeley is the name he adopted when he came to Canada as a British home child. So he was sent as an agrarian worker at age 14 or 15 from a troubled home in England. And his name was something else.
I was wondering if about a sort of connection to Britain, but there we go. He was from Britain and emigrated to Canada. Okay.
But he's not, and then there was another guy who created the World Mental Health Organization. And that is where sociology began to get a direct drip feed of experiments from MKUltra, was through the Mental Health Organization.
Wow.
Yeah. And his name, and his claim to fame is that he spoke against Santa Claus. And he said that any man who teaches their child that Santa Claus is real or exists or is creating the next soldier for the World War, because that is the fool who will believe. And so he went to war with Santa Claus, and shortly thereafter, he was kicked out of the whole program. So the using crazies and lunatics to push it forward and then getting rid of them, like Trump did. You moving the thing forward with people that are kind of expendable, low cost to get rid of, high cost to run, highly expendable, high profile. And that's how the thing is moved forward into the Minister of Health in Canada is rumored to be a transsexual.
Michael? Mm-hmm. I want to say this. It's incredibly important and incumbent upon us to share this video, spread it wide. Go check out Michael Falconer Adamson's books on Amazon, and also his website, links in the description below. And also, please do come and join my community, because I'll be doing a call for community members on Friday, the 28th of August, only for exclusive to community members. And there's other things that are available for community members. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. This is Rich and Michael signing out. All the best. Bye-bye.